Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats. The session will begin momentarily. Ladies and gentlemen, from Merkle, please welcome to the stage, Amanda Gessert.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today and braving the tornado that apparently happened. I don't know if you all got the tornado warning this morning, but that was pretty insane. Welcome to Visualizing Big Marketing Data in the Cloud. I'm Amanda Gessert. I'm a Senior Director of Marketing Intelligence at Merkle. I've been working with Tableau for about 8 years now. This is actually my 7th Tableau conference. How cool is that? Yeah, woo! So today we're here to talk about marketing data. And like I mentioned, I'm here from Merkle. So Merkle is a marketing agency. We do a variety of different things, really anything marketing that you could imagine. We've got about 5,500 employees, about 400 clients all over the world. And what I think is really cool is we manage about 3.7 billion first-party data records. So when it comes to big data, we spend a lot of time in that world. One of the things that's really core to Merkle that we believe in really, really strongly is in people-based marketing. So what that means is that you're actually talking to individual people. You're not marketing to a proxy. And by that, I mean something like a device ID or a cookie or an address. You're actually marketing to an individual with thoughts and feelings and ideas where different messages or different marketing materials might resonate differently. We also believe that marketing is very personal and that it's powered by technology. We actually got our start by building marketing databases and helping clients collect all of that data about their marketing. And since then, we've grown to do really cool advanced analytics like attribution and customer journey analysis, which is exactly what I'm here to talk about today, leveraging really cool big data cloud technologies to enable some of those advanced analytics. So in order to do that, we're going to do a really quick primer on event stream, customer journey analytics, and attribution so that everybody here has an idea of what I'm talking about. So what is an event stream? If you're an individual out there looking to, let's say, buy a TV, right? You're going to be exposed to a number of different marketing tactics. You've got direct mail, paid search, email. You may be playing around on the website. Maybe you're driving down the road and you see a billboard as you're driving by. Right? There's a lot of different marketing tactics that you are seeing every single day. And all of those that grow together are what ultimately push you to make a purchase. They influence your decision. They influence your opinion on the brand. And that's what we call an event stream. All of those different interaction points along that customer journey leading up to that purchase or that conversion. Now, at the surface, this seems pretty easy, right? We're just taking all of those marketing touch points and assembling them together. But how do you analyze an event stream? And that's where something called attribution comes in. Now, direct attribution is the process of identifying one of those interaction points and giving the credit to that interaction point. So in this case, it was the paid search campaign that we're going to give 100% of credit to that purchase that the individual made. But if we're just giving all of the credit to paid search, that's not necessarily the best way to look at it. It's kind of a financially flawed view of performance because there were all of these other marketing tactics that played into that. Maybe it really was that billboard I happened to pass by that kind of helped me pull the trigger to purchase that new TV. So a far better way to look at your data is by leveraging something called multi-touch attribution. And that's the process of taking all of those interaction points and then running a statistical model over all of those interaction points to try to understand which of those helped influence the decision. In addition, it's possible that it wasn't just that paid search is more valuable than display. It could be that when paid search is paired with display, they work together to create a whole that's bigger than the sum of its parts. So that's another thing that we look at with attribution modeling, trying to identify those interactions between all of those touch points so that you're really getting a much more complete and financially accurate view of what your marketing performance looks like. Now, for the marketers in the room, and I'm sure there's a lot of you here, you're probably asking yourself, I get this event stream thing, but who is that guy? Because tying all of those different marketing tactics together, that's not necessarily easy, right? Because we've got all of these different identifiers. People aren't necessarily really people in the marketing world. We've got cookies, we've got device ID, name, address, phone number. There's all of these different pieces to an identity. So how do we figure out who this guy is? Well, this is the process that's called addressability or identity management. And the idea behind this is tying together all of those different identifiers so that you can assemble an event stream or a customer journey. And this has changed a lot over time in the marketing world, and it's changed really rapidly. For those of you who remember the golden age of direct mail back in the 90s where you had name and address, that was actually a very big deal. We can target individual households because we know where they live. This is awesome, right? And then we can track to see if that household ultimately purchased whatever we wanted them to buy. That was kind of the beginning of marketing measurement. From there, we were able to grow into getting access to phone numbers, email addresses, cookies, device ID, until where we are today, because no longer do we have to rely on cookie or device ID, which, let's be honest, really is just related to a browser and sometimes a device. But I don't know about you guys, I've got my phone up here, I've got my computer. I have multiple devices and multiple browsers that I use. Now we're at the place where using things like custom audiences with Facebook or with Google and other data providers that are out there, we're able to actually target individual people. So by leveraging those technologies in tandem with all of those other identifiers we've been able to collect, we can really start to assemble a much more complete view of a person. And this enables us to market to real people as opposed to proxies, moving away from device and cookie and address to the individual person. And then instead of marketing what direct mail piece we think would be most effective on a Tuesday, we're considering that customer, their customer segment, what their thoughts, beliefs, where they are, what's going to resonate with them, and what combination of marketing tactics can we leverage in order to target that person. So I think at this point, we could probably all agree that this whole event stream and attribution analysis, it leads to better marketing decisions, right? Because we're measuring. This makes inherent sense. And if I take a look at this quote from a Harvard Business Review study, they agree. Businesses that integrate multiple sources of customer and marketing data significantly outperform other companies in terms of sales, profits, and margin. And they also had dramatically higher total shareholder returns. This sounds amazing, right? And you guys are all doing this, right? Yeah, somebody's doing it. Good for you. But why doesn't everybody do it? Why was there just one person in the back of the room that gave out a little whoop and like everybody didn't cheer, right? Why isn't everybody doing this? Well, the truth is, it's hard. And it's hard for a few different reasons, a couple of which is that integrating marketing data kind of looks like a spindly spider web. I had to throw in the Halloween reference. I'm sorry, I'm a big fan of Halloween. But it is. It's a tangled web. We have all of these different platforms that we're executing marketing from. We have all of these different tactics. We've got mass media, which is inherently harder to track. And then we've got very granular digital data with kind of this onslaught of data. It's kind of a spindly mess. There's a lot of data integration necessary in order to accomplish that. The second reason is that when you go to visualize really, really big data, you kind of get a spaghetti mess. All of a sudden, a lot of the visualizations that you've been able to leverage in the past don't work as well because the granularity of the data is much, much, much more granular. So now, instead of looking at a marketing campaign and performance, we're talking about people and groups of people and geographic areas of people, much more granular. So it's challenging to visualize. Now, this is something that we work with all the time with our clients. And so I'm super excited to share kind of our approach for how we tackle this, because I really think once you break this up into steps, this is something that each and every one of you in the room can start to tackle. Well, sure, the big picture of this is really, really challenging. If you take it kind of step by step, you can really make a big impact and a lot of progress. So the case study that I'm going to talk about today was with one of our clients. They happen to be an international travel company, and we approached this project over 2 phases, kind of like what I was just talking about. We broke it up into pieces. The first phase was, quite honestly, leadership didn't buy that this was valuable. They said, look, it sounds hard, it sounds expensive, it sounds like a really big thing to bite off and chew, so isn't there another way? Can't we just do a proof of concept? And we said, sure, we'll do a proof of concept. So that's phase 1. I'm going to cover that first. And phase 1 involved integrating DCM, or DoubleClick, or Campaign Manager data. And we brought it into BigQuery, and we incorporated some CRM data, some customer data. And then we built out a solution just leveraging those 2 data sources. This is what our architecture looked like. We leveraged the Google Cloud Platform, which, by the way, is awesome. I'm a really big fan of the Google Cloud Platform because it makes marketing data really easy, especially for their own marketing platform. So with the DoubleClick that we're bringing in, it's really just a matter of filling out a couple of fields, and then you hit a button, and you get all of your log data in, because it's already in the Google network. So they just pull that into the Google Cloud Platform for you, and you don't have to connect to an API. You don't have to do any fancy thing. That just comes in, which is amazing. Then, once we got all those log file tables, you can see them there, we brought in some customer data. So we worked with our client to identify some customer segments and some customer lifetime values. And we found an identifier that they were able to populate in the U-value fields within DoubleClick. And we had them load that up into Google Cloud Storage. Now, the Google Cloud Platform is a little bit difficult to understand because there's a lot of different pieces. When I say Google Cloud Storage, that's often what you would think about as kind of a traditional big data store. You can put structured and unstructured data. You can just kind of toss everything in the kitchen sink in there, and it'll hold it for you. Once it's there, we leverage the ETL tool that's within the Google Cloud environment, Dataflow, and we integrated a lot of that data and brought it into BigQuery. Now, BigQuery is like the super fast analytical database within the Google Cloud Platform, and it's awesome and it's super fast, which makes working with data very easy. So once we brought that in, we gave it a little bit of Merkle magic. It's a little M there, and we integrated everything to build a raw event stream. And that's exactly what we were just looking at, all of those interaction points over time for an individual customer. From there, we pulled it into Tableau Desktop, and we built some cool dashboards, because pulling together all of that data is really only part of the problem. You also need to build a story and prove insights and show value in order to deliver impact to leadership, in order to persuade them that this is not just kind of a crazy harebrained, very expensive, like long, hard work sort of ordeal. This is something that we need to do because it's going to deliver value to us. So our technology here, just to kind of set the stage, this is all cloud-based. We built the event stream. We kind of tied together those identifiers, built some Tableau dashboards, and you'll see we love story points at Merkle because it means that I can demo things, or my team can demo things, or anybody can demo things, and it's pretty easy to retell some cool insights that you found within the dashboards to a different audience. So with that, I am going to jump into my demo here. See if we can get the demo up. Can we flip to the demo? Awesome. So this is what we call our cloud marketing analytics proof of concept. Terrifying for those of you in the audience who have ever done live demos. This is actually connected to BigQuery on this computer here. We were having internet issues before, so think very happy thoughts because we're going to query everything live. We're going to cover 3 dashboards. So we've got our cross-channel analysis, our campaign analysis, which are pretty high level, and then we've got the event stream analysis, which is going to be the much more granular kind of customer journey view of things. And I've got to say, at Merkle, we really like to eat our own dog food here. So while I certainly couldn't show our client data to you, we actually rebuilt the whole solution using Merkle marketing data. So we did the same thing. We went out, we pulled our double-click data in, we pulled some of our firmographic data, because we're a B2B business, right? And we tied it all together. So that's actually what I'm going to demo today. I think that's kind of cool. Now, because we're looking at B2B data, we're only looking at 3.3 million records here. In the world of big data, this is kind of small. We were working on another client's data. We had 650 million records last week for 60 days worth of data. That's much more typical of the scale of data for this type of solution, because you have all of those different interaction points. All right, here we've got our event stream. So you can see over here, I've got all of these different user IDs. And for each user ID, I've got a bunch of different event types. So I can see for this person here, they were served an impression, so they saw a display ad. There was a little bit of break, and then they saw a few more display ads. They happened to click on a couple of them, and then they saw some pages. Well, this is awesome, right? This is exactly what I was hoping for these customers to do, to see and click and interact with my display ads. Awesome. If I come down here, you can see I've got another customer, and it looks like they were served a lot of impressions, so they saw a lot of display ads, but they didn't really click on anything. That's kind of a bummer. Now, what's really cool is that if I assemble my data in an event stream manner like this, time series by person over time, it enables me to look at my data in 2 distinct ways. So first, I can look at things as a high-level campaign dashboard. Second, and I'll show that a bit later, is I can look at things in a time series customer journey type view. Now, this campaign dashboard, in the grand scheme of Tableau things, and we've seen a lot of very cool things this week, it's kind of basic. You can see my channel up here in the top right. Right now, I just have DCM data, although I certainly could add additional data sources. I can see for this 1 month of data that we had 52,712 impressions. We had 21 clicks. We had 617 page views. And I can take a look at all of the different campaigns that went on during that time period. If I were to select one individual campaign here, in this case, the 2018 Digital Bold display ads, I can see that it looks like most of the clicks, the interactivity, was taking place in the United States. Well, this makes sense, because this is a campaign that I was kind of expecting there to be a lot of interaction in the US, because the Digital Bowl, that's US-centric. If I come over here, I can take a look at my time series view and see over time, it looks like the clicks peaked on March 4th, And then it looks like they went down here on March 18th, and then they peaked back again on March 25th. Again, this is kind of what I expected, because this was centered around an event. So I was waiting and saw a lot of interaction happen before the event. The event happened, there was a drop, and then there was a little bit of a peak after. So great, it looks like this campaign is doing everything that I wanted it to do. If I come over here, dive a little bit deeper, I can take a look at an individual ad name. So here I've selected this Twitter campaign, and I can take a look at how things look geographically. So it appears as though the UK had slightly lower page views given the number of clicks, and it looks as though Canada had slightly more page views given the number of clicks. Well, that's kind of interesting. So I wonder if that particular Twitter campaign, if it was the language I used or even the spelling that I used that happened to resonate better with one geographic audience versus another, enough so that they kind of hung out and they did a few more page views than I otherwise might expect. That's kind of a cool insight as well. I might want to take a deeper look at that campaign. Now, of course, as promised, we're going to take a look at things in more of a time series format as well. Because while those high-level campaign dashboards are often what you'll see when you're doing some general campaign analysis, there is a much deeper well of opportunity for different ways that you can analyze data. So again, looking at this event stream, just to level set, we've got users and we've got events going all the way down the left-hand side here. And now we've got a whole bunch of event dates going along the bottom. Now, if I take all of those users and all of those interactions and events, and I start to roll all of those up, I'm going to get a view that looks a bit like this. Now, admittedly, this isn't the most interesting view in the world, especially in the world of display, because I can see there are a ton of impressions. A lot of people saw display ads, just a few clicks. And if I come all the way down here to conversions, you probably can't even see it. They are so small. So a very, very tiny amount of conversions. We're just looking at the relative percent of total here for all of the different interactions over time. Now, in order to really get a better view of exactly what's going on with all of these interactions, I need to dive a little bit deeper. And to do that, I'm going to segment my data. So now what I'm doing, and by the way, for the Tableau geeks in the room, this is very cool. What I'm doing is I am taking my user IDs, and I am looking at all of the events for that user ID. And I've actually got an LOD calculation that's written in here to take a look at all of those events, identify if there was a conversion within that time period, and if there was, rolling up to that user ID, flag all of those events as yes, have a purchase. If there wasn't a conversion during that time period, then I'm flagging all of those to no, doesn't have a purchase. But what's so neat is since this is done in Tableau with an LOD calc and not an ETL, as soon as I've got new data loaded in, it's just going to automatically resegment all of my customers for me. As soon as that conversion comes in, all of the events prior to that are going to immediately swap over and recategorize. I don't have to ask IT or do some crazy ETL to look back on all of those events and then reflag all of those every time I get an incremental load. I can actually have Tableau do it itself. Now again, we're still looking at a whole bunch of impressions here. Really the only insight that I can gain is that when I drill down to page views, I can see that it looks like there are relatively more page views for those that have a purchase versus those that don't. Well, that's actually kind of interesting. Not necessarily surprising. People that purchased are spending time viewing pages on my website, but I'm curious if I look at those page views, what I find. And sure enough, if I take a look here at the pages viewed by each of those different segments over time, I start to see a bit more variation. So we can see, for those that did not convert, they didn't purchase anything, it looks like they're spending some time here on March 4th on the Merkle Thank You Live on 24 webinar sign up console thank you. Now, if that webinar's goal was to target people so that they'd immediately purchase something, it looks like that webinar is not doing a great job, right? It's being visited by all of these people who never made a purchase, even after the webinar took place. So it might not be a very good webinar. Conversely, if I come down here and I take a look at those that did convert, I can see a whole bunch of interactions starting on March 4th that are happening on this 500 Friends all-site standard. Now this is really cool because I happen to know that 500 Friends is related to loyalty. So I have a bunch of people who have recently converted, they've recently purchased something, who are snooping around on the loyalty pages. That seems like an opportunity to me. I could go out to those folks that have recently purchased something and say, hey, have you thought about loyalty? Let me talk to you about some of the additional details that we have about our loyalty offerings. This is a really cool opportunity that I could take action on. Now, I'm going to jump back into the presentation here for a minute and talk about some of the findings for this first phase 1. Because remember, this was just a proof of concept. We were just showing some of the initial value that you can get by assembling a couple of data sources into an event stream. And one of the things that we found was that our client got excited, which was amazing. They thought it was really cool. They didn't think about their data in this way before, and they saw the value with using Tableau. And their excitement spread to the point where they said, you know what, we really want to integrate more data sources, and we want to build out this event stream, and we want to develop some attribution. So what we did was we took that original foundation, and we layered on some multi-touch attribution. And I'm going to demo that here in just a second in order to weight all of those interaction points. We also did some media mix modeling. So that's top-down attribution, looking at some of the mass media, looking at things like billboards and brand TV that are typically difficult to measure. And we took that media mix modeling and that multi-touch attribution, and we brought it all together into what we call connected attribution so that you really get a much fuller, complete view of financial performance. And finally, we built, frankly, some way cooler Tableau dashboards on the top of it, much more interesting than the ones that we built as part of phase 1. And once we were finished and we presented it to the client, one of them came up afterwards and said, you know, I'd only ever seen smoke and mirrors before, but this is real, and we're excited about this because we know that this is going to fundamentally change how we measure our marketing performance. Now, this is the architecture that we used for phase 1. This should look familiar, right? We've got DoubleClick, we've got our CRM data, bringing it all together, Merkle magic, and then we are building a raw event stream. For phase 2, we integrated way more data sources. So you can see I've got some AdWords, I've got some Google Analytics 360, I have that X+. You're going to see exactly what that X+ is. It's a lot. Whole bunch of different data sources. We leveraged data transfer service where we could. We brought some stuff into Google Cloud Storage. We integrated all of it. And now you can see we have a modeled event stream as opposed to the raw event stream that we were working with before. And then finally, we built some Tableau dashboards, again, way cooler Tableau dashboards on top of that to be able to look at a more multi-channel view of what our marketing performance looked like. So, level setting our technology again, still cloud-based architecture, built the event stream, have an identity layer operating underneath it, have that really cool attribution modeling, top down, bottom up, bring it all together, and Tableau dashboards, but this time with some real-time updates where we were able to accomplish that. So, let me go back over here and let's take a look at the demo. And let's make it big. Okay, so we have 4 dashboards as part of the attribution solution that we built out. We have an executive dashboard, which is really a very high-level view. So think like top-line KPIs, you know, just general view of what's going on with marketing performance, although that does not mean it's not detailed. And then we have 2 more drill-down views. We've got the scorecard dashboard, and we've got the diagnostic dashboard, where you can drill into individual campaigns and kind of get a much more granular view of what that performance looks like. And then finally, we have the competitive dashboard. This is really cool. So we actually pulled in some competitor spend data from Kantar Media, and then we brought that into the dashboards as well, because when you're measuring marketing performance, it's not only important to look at what you're doing, but if you're able to, it's good to keep tabs on what your competition is doing as well, right? Because marketing doesn't exist in a silo. There's a number of other different influences that could come in and affect what your overall marketing performance looks like. So let's take a look at the dashboards. So this is our attribution dashboard, just the high-level executive view. I know it looks detailed, but this is still the high-level executive view. And we do find even some leadership does use this. In order to walk through all of these dashboards, rather than just put them up on the screen and be like, executive dashboard, scorecard, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story about how our client uses these dashboards, because I think that's way more interesting. And it's a really cool story, too. It's a story about ROI and how we can look at our marketing performance through revenue-based metrics to have a better understanding of what's going on with our marketing tactics. All right, so if I'm logging into this dashboard here, I happen to see right off the bat that it looks like overall my spend is up this year. But it looks like my revenue is down. And so is my ROI. That is not good. So I better figure out what's going on here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to blame it on somebody else. So I'm going to come over here to the competitor dashboard to see if maybe my competition is spending more, because it's not my fault. Oh, darn. It looks like spend was actually consistently lower among my competition this year. So it probably is not likely due to my competition spending more that my ROI and revenue is down. So better head back over to the executive dashboard and see if I can figure out what might be happening here. Great. So now that I'm in the executive dashboard, I'm going to take a look at some of those individual channels. Now, I mentioned before that we brought in that X plus, right? There's like a whole lot of marketing channels. I want to give you a view of exactly what I mean by that. So we've got everything that you could imagine in here. We really did a full-scale integration. We've got direct mail, we've got display, earned social, email, online video, organic search, outdoor media, literally billboards. We've got paid search, paid social, print, even promotions, because promotions have an effect on your marketing performance. If you're putting a sale on everything, right, that's ultimately going to change how people interact with you as a brand. So that's something that we take a look at here as well. Radio and TV, again, more brand level types of marketing. So now that we're looking at all of these different marketing channels and we're layering attribution on top, which is what I'm taking a look at over here. You can see I've got this decayed. So I am layering an attribution model on top of all of my revenue conversion metrics. So when I take a look at something like my revenue being down and my ROI being down, and then I start to look at my individual channels like we're about to do, I'm looking at a weighted value. So this is not last touch. It's not saying that, oh, that the sum of all of those display ads out there, what was all of the revenue if we assumed one conversion, one whole conversion happened because of that display ad. We're looking at fractional conversions, and that's rolling through to all of those other metrics. So it really is much more complex behind the scenes than it might appear. But this is what's important. It doesn't look that way. Everything that I'm seeing here just looks like my spend, my revenue, my ROI. They're familiar metrics to me. And that really helps with adoption with attribution. It really helps to lessen some of that resistance when people see their numbers change. So keeping things in an environment that looks familiar really, really helps. All right, so as promised, let's take a look at some of our individual channels here. if I come down here and look at spend effectiveness, I see that my spend effectiveness score is 204. Now, spend effectiveness is a metric that we often look at after applying attribution. It's kind of a cool metric. What we do is take the percent of our total spend, and then we measure how much revenue that spend drove as another percent. And then we just take the ratio of those two metrics. So when we're looking here at display, I've got 13% of my total spend went to display ads. That 13% of spend, happened to drive 26% of my total revenue. Awesome, right? This is great. That means I was getting like 2x here, return. I've got 13% of my total spend, 26% of my total revenue. Everything looks fantastic here. I feel really good about display. I've limited it only to this year, just to take a look at what performance for this year looks like. But remember, the difference I'm seeing between my revenue and ROI was the difference from last year. Because it's very important when you're looking at KPIs, you're always relating them to some benchmark, something to compare to. You don't want to look at just the raw revenue value. What is that, 7.077 million, right? That sounds great. But if I don't compare that to something, that number is essentially meaningless. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip over here to a filtered view of my dashboard where I'm no longer looking at 2018. Here you can see I've just brought that filter over, and I'm looking at 2017 instead. All right, well now when I take a look down here at what's going on with display, it looks like last year, 11% of my total spend drove 25% of my total revenue, leading to a spend effectiveness score of 232. Well, that's a lot better, right? I was kind of excited about that 200, but now that I'm basing my reference point off of last year's performance, this no longer looks quite as good. It actually looks like display somehow this year got a heck of a lot less performant. So I probably should figure out what's going on with my display ads, because clearly something isn't working as well as it should be. So in order to do that, I'm going to flip over here to a more detailed dashboard. All right, so now you can see I've filtered this view just to display, so I'm no longer looking at the other channels. What's important here, though, is that while I filtered to the display channel, I am still applying that attribution algorithm on the back end of this. So all of my values are looking at the attribution model output for revenue, conversions, and everything else. So when I come up here and see that my spend overall is increasing, but my conversions are increasing, that means my fractional conversions are increasing, even though it just says conversions, because remember, everything we're looking at here has attribution applied to it. But it looks like even though my spend is increasing and my conversions are increasing, my revenue is stagnant and my ROI is actually decreasing. That is very bad. But here is what the good news is. I know that for display, my revenue and my ROI are decreasing. Too frequently, when we work with clients and we're taking a look at some of the campaign dashboards that folks are using to measure, you'll see response metrics and you'll see conversion metrics. So when I say response, I mean something like a click rate, right? If we're talking about display ads, or maybe even we're looking at email, you've got a click rate there, like an open rate, something that we're regarding as a response. If I've got those response metrics that I'm looking at and kind of counting those as my conversions, like people who came in the door, or even I'm looking at sales and I'm counting those as conversions. If I'm doing that, I wouldn't have known that display was causing a problem here, because by leveraging only those action type metrics, I'm looking at a flawed version of my marketing performance. In this case, it's actually the quality of my conversions that are coming in the door that aren't as good. So that's really important. If you're looking at your marketing performance, it's really, really important to make sure you're looking at your revenue and your ROI as well. Because in this case, that's what's causing my problem and affecting my bottom line. So let's see if we can't figure out how to turn this around. I'm going to come into this dashboard, which goes all the way down to a campaign and even a publisher level. And you can see here I'm still filtered down to display, so only looking at my display ads. And I've got a scatter plot here with spend going across the x-axis here, and then ROI going across the y. And there's a couple of campaigns that immediately stand out to me. Here I can see for campaign 20, it looks as though spend was relatively high, but I was getting kind of low ROI from that particular campaign. Whereas if I come over here, I can see campaign 23 has high ROI, but relatively low spend. Well, gosh, it seems like if I take some of that high spend going to a low ROI campaign and I redirect it to this other campaign that has relatively low spend but relatively high ROI, I might be able to change the direction of my overall ROI. If I want to get even more specific about where I want to take that spend from, and I limit my dashboard here just to take a look at campaign 20, I can see that there were 3 publishers that had super high spend. So why don't I take some of the spend from those publishers where I'm spending $2.6 million and $1.5 million and $1.3 million? Like, let's take some of that spend and bring it over into campaign 23 where it seems like there might be some opportunity. And I bet that's going to impact my revenue and ROI. So this is really cool, right? Now I'm making decisions based off of my bottom line, the things that actually drive my business, and I'm making decisions cross-channel, looking at my individual channels to try to see where there might be areas for me to try to improve. So let's go ahead and flip back over to the presentation and talk about some of the things that we learned and some of the really cool big wins from this. So first of all, decisions are based on more accurate multi-touch attribution data. Yay, right? That's like the golden, place where everybody's trying to get to. We're looking at fractionally attributed interactions and touch points, and we're making decisions off of that. That was a huge win for this client. They also saw huge gains in efficiency of their marketing spend because now they were looking at the efficiency of their marketing spend. They were looking at how their spend drove their ROI and their revenue, what the interaction between those looked like, both from a macro scale across, mass media, as well as at a granular scale, where you're looking at things like digital data. Also, they were asking better questions of better metrics, again, focused on the revenue and the ROI metrics. And finally, our relationship with the client grew, which was a win for us. This made us look really great, right? Because they were able to find opportunity and do better marketing. And so it really deepened our relationship. They saw us as much more of a strategic advisor and much less as just an agency that was going to build out some data for them. Now, what about you guys? Right? If you want to do this too, like, how do you take the first steps? Where do you start? And the truth is that while it's a long journey, you really can distill it down to a couple of steps just to get started. So this is our approach. This is what you can take back with you. Really, 3 easy steps. Start small, prove value, and then build out from there. So start small. Just pick a couple of data sets. Do you remember that first phase I showed, right? We just took DoubleClick data. We just took some CRM data. Those dashboards weren't even that pretty, and they still were excited, right? So the bar doesn't necessarily have to be set astronomically high. Instead, just pick a couple of little things, bring those together, and then prove the value in this. This is where Tableau comes in, because everybody likes pretty visuals. So take that data and then find some really cool insights, some golden nuggets within that data that you can bring to leadership and say, hey, did you know if you do this, I bet you can make your bottom line, your marketing spend more, your bottom line change, your marketing spend more efficient, whatever it might be. Find those golden nuggets and then use that to help drive that build out phase. And you don't have to bite off everything at once. Take individual data sources and integrate those one at a time. Build out your solution until you have enough pulled together that you can start to overlay some different attribution models. So I'm going to talk a little bit more detailed about these 3 steps. First, start small. This is literally what the data looks like. You've got your customer ID that you're bringing in through the U value. You've got your CRM segment. You've got time series data just from DCM. And then you've got those different interaction types. That's all you need to build some of those initial dashboards. That's it. And then you can build some cool visuals like that. Find some really cool insights. So the first step can really be very small, very simple. And like I said, I love the Google Cloud Platform for this because it just kind of automatically does it. It makes it very, very easy. For the next step, when you're starting to build out, pick a couple of other data sources. We cheated. We took the easy ones that Google also will kind of automatically port over for you. And then integrate those. Because then you're just stacking records. So you can see now in the records, we're no longer just looking at DCM. We've got Google Analytics 360 that's pulled in there. And we've got a bunch of different interaction points. We define some logic about conversions. So just start to flesh out that event stream. From there, you can apply some attribution modeling. Now, attribution modeling can range anywhere from being like download from GitHub and just apply an attribution model to very sophisticated, focused on your industry and the individual types of marketing that you're putting out there and the customer segments that you're targeting. There's really a wide range of what that can look like. You can always start small and build out from there with your attribution model as well. But all this is that full blown out dashboard, that build out, the really cool stuff that I showed, this is what the data model looks like. It's not any more complex. It's just adding on that attribution model layer. And then you can build the super cool dashboards, which I think is awesome. So this is not necessarily rocket science. It is a lot of work and it does take some effort. But by paving the road with those little steps and choosing just a few different data sources to integrate, it really makes it just a step-by-step easier process. So with that, I want to thank everybody for coming here. It was really exciting to be able to speak to all of you. In case you didn't know, we're actually being live streamed right now too, which is pretty crazy. So thanks again, everyone. I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of conference. And fill out your session survey. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to come up and chat with me afterwards.